Why struggle through a post-merger integration when you can glide through it? Why deal with the PMI integration challenges when you can overcome them even before they occur? Why move slow when you can move at pace? What are the world's leading PMI experts doing right now to achieve profit-accelerating integrations? This podcast will give you all the answers to these questions and many more. My name is Dudley Peacock, and welcome to the 100 Days and Beyond podcast. This is the marketing leadership version of our podcast, and we've got a fascinating guy, Harry Henry, who's joined us. I think he could probably be part of both. All our podcasts because of his varied background. But I think today I'd like to focus on the marketing leadership side. But there's a mass amount of brand M&A, being an international speaker, passionate about building performing organizations, and currently part of 2 organizations. And our podcast really is focused on those special individuals that are out there making things happen. I think Harry's one of them. Good morning, Harry. Welcome to the show. Good morning. And I'm sure everyone will enjoy your journey and how we got here and how we intend to go forward into the future. I mean, you're a young guy. You've got loads of energy. You guys are creating an immense amount of momentum in the marketplace.
That is incredibly kind of you. I think we're more of an age than you think, Dudley. I think are you not born in 1980?
No, I'm actually born in the wonderful year of 1968, which makes me 53.
Right. Marketing people keep well.
Yes, I think we try and keep healthy and well. But I mean, it's also quite useful to have a bit of DNA on your side sometimes as well. But yeah, so welcome here. So I want to just go straight into it. I just say thank you very much for joining me. You and I had a conversation a few days back, and wow, I mean, it blew me away. And I think the journey, the things that you guys have been up to, you're part of 2 organizations. I just want to just sort of run through that as well. But I'm going to just quickly read your summary, and then we're just going to go straight into your journey. I mean, you talk about being an executive with experience as a private company director, as well as long career in management consulting, at home in 2 worlds, corporate and startups. I mean, that's very interesting because sometimes, the one taints the other because you tend to be in the trenches with the one. And really be busy with grassroots, and corporate is very very structured, very organized, but sometimes a lot of cotton wool to carry you through the tough patches, where the startups you very much at the coalface, where every single bullet that flies your way you've got to duck. So that's very interesting. With over 10 years P&L responsibility, hands-on to the point, and at home in any sort of turbulence. I have a proven multi-industry track record of delivering growth, change, and inspiration. So I did ask for a good interview with you today, and you kindly agreed. So give us the intro. Tell us who you are and what makes you tick, and how did you get to where you are?
Well, in brief, and as a comment to that always slightly embarrassing LinkedIn blurb, I'm originally from Madagascar, with a German father, and I grew up in Finland. And my early days, I worked. I spent almost 8 years in Deloitte Consulting and M&A and strategy, and I was silly enough to start my own company just before I joined Deloitte, and then I kept bootstrapping it through my years in Deloitte. And Deloitte were very understanding. I learned an awful lot on both ends, but it really is a young man's game. I mean, it was one of those where, for example, I can't remember the year 2009. It was a financial crisis which hit consulting hard very quickly. M&A closed up. At the same time, I was in a business. I was in services. I was in dance, and so building that up while there was a financial crisis and all your customers are in crisis mode wasn't great fun. There's 8 months of my life that I don't remember because I worked. I think my highest billable month for Deloitte then was 282 hours in a month, and I still hired people for the other company. So I can't advise, but it's for anyone to do that. But the very necessary and nice side effect was that I had impeccable time management when I came out of 2009. So I found that I was fairly quick at most sort of mundane tasks, or things like, or even things like conceptualizing things, getting things off the ground, gathering momentum, getting stuff done in sort of half the time or 1/3 of the time, without ruffling too many feathers as well. So that's also where the penchant for turbulence comes from. So I just don't mind it. It's just when emotion ticks over, which is very typical in an M&A environment anyway, in post-merger integration especially, the emotion is one thing, but at the end of the day, it's all people. None of it is rocket science. It just usually requires someone to make a really good list and to make sure that people are accountable for the things in that list. That's it. But then, as my marketing background, so my big one, my holy grail at the moment is with WePack, where I have both the marketing and brand organizations, the innovation organization, as well as sustainability. And one of the early things, so we're looking to be the first carbon neutral flexible packaging company in the world. So plastic packaging, but carbon neutral by 2025, which is for a huge global corporate. It's a big ask, but that is the strategy. We're going to do that. And one of the key moments for me early on, taking on that role, was that we saw very clearly that sustainability and marketing need to be one department. And a lot of the time in marketing, we have such silly departments such as marcoms, marketing and communications. They have nothing to do with each other. We don't understand the difference between sales, marketing, and brand. There's 3 different things. And we don't understand what sustainability really means to our customers in a lot of contexts, right? So we work off something that sounds like sustainability, like green energy, or reducing the amount of certain materials that you use while increasing others, which might have a much higher carbon footprint. And so to find the fact base in sustainability and to amalgamate that with marketing, which, by the way, if we look at, for instance, just direct to consumer marketing, we needed to see an ad about 4 to 5 times in 2016-17 for us to click on it once. Now we need to see it between 16 and 19 times. Because people don't click on stuff. There's too much sensory play going on, and so the only thing that really works is, in my mind, everything else is dead, is content marketing. And content marketing is predicated on good data, on facts, and bringing those facts and that data alive. And so, to me, marketing is, especially B2B marketing, which I'm in mostly, is doing 2 things. One is obvious, I think, to anyone who follows and everyone who's followed marketing for a few years, which is B2B and B2C are getting closer and closer to each other. In the UK, B2B marketing spend is almost the same as B2C marketing spend. Now, if I ask this audience, and maybe you're able to chat, I don't know, maybe you're not, how many of you remember a single B2B ad? A single memorable B2B ad from the last 5 years? No one's going to come up with anything. Maybe you saw one sort of outdoor banner thingy next to Heathrow, going to Heathrow from London, when Mercedes-Benz had trucks, right? But there's nothing you remember, because B2B marketing is so much less sophisticated this time, because somehow we assume that I turn into a completely different person. I turn into Homo economicus when I go to work, and I don't want to see good content. All of a sudden, all I want is facts and prices, which couldn't be further from the truth. And so when I draw this back into the 2 trends that I see happening, one, of course, is we get more sophisticated, we go the way of B2C. But the other one is we need to find a way to bring the facts alive in stories and in ways that people are actually interested in hearing them.
Yeah, and if I think about the methods to market have changed significantly, and also I think where the biggest change for me has happened in B2B space is that there's now such a big gap in generations, and the methods in which generations are being marketed to. So you take, and this is very general, but if I look to try and get hold of, let's say, decision makers within large entities, with the pandemic, with people working from home or doing this hybrid work right now, just getting a telephone call done is almost non-existent. I mean, I think, I don't know, I mentioned to someone the other day, I heard my telephone ringing and I didn't recognize the ringtone, because I haven't used my phone for such a long time. And we
Do you
always
pick up
now.
the phone when it rings? Do you generally
Well,
pick it up and you call back?
I had to find it first, and then once I'd found my phone, then I'd answered the phone. But I hardly ever do any outbounds, and I don't get any inbound calls really. And the only ones I do get are family, maybe,
Yeah.
you're sending
So
me a
I
WhatsApp
get
message.
plenty of calls, but I never pick them up unless it's someone I know. And even then it's sort of a 50-50. And the reason is not because I don't like calls. I don't want to get them. One is I don't want certain types of calls, the salesy ones. But the other thing is I've got my process. I've got how I work. I've decided what I'm going to do with this time. And the worst thing you can do for your effectiveness is to let yourself be interrupted all the time. So I don't understand how people have notifications on their phone, and the phone goes off every time someone has put a bid through you on your eBay or whatnot. Every single app goes off all the time. So does your Outlook, so does your calendar app, and then it's your phone, right? So I wouldn't get anything done. So I've turned all of that off, and I know that if it's an emergency, people can get to you. Like people will find a way to get to you, and then they call from a number that I know.
Yeah, and it's become really, really difficult to get through to decision makers. And decision makers, I think you're absolutely spot on. What I like about what you said was that decision makers, in the B2B space, I mean, they're still human beings, and still buy an emotion as well as facts and figures and so on. And I think one needs to take cognizance that everyone's busy, and we are busier. If I take how many more meetings we take during the day because of
So
online meetings and so on.
yeah, I understand. I think my subjective opinion on this is that decision makers are harder to reach, not just because they're more busy, but because they've got their shield wall up, because literally every Jack and Jill and their dog is dropping them a LinkedIn inbox that first lies and says, hey, I really want to connect with you. You have great experience. We seem to be in a similar sphere. I just want to grow my network. And the moment you accept them, they will drop you sort of a copy-pasted thing that gets your name wrong. And then it says, I read through your profile. No, you didn't, because otherwise it'd be relevant. And then the sort of the icing on the cake for me is the PDF. So it comes with a PDF, or in the coaching business, it's a free book, right?
Yeah.
And I've just gotten so fed up with that I just send them a friendly link, or friendly with a smiley, and I'm like, hi, thanks for connecting, thanks for reaching out. By the way, before we go any further, could I ask you to read my blog? And I sent them a link to my blog where I have 6 unsavory types and 1 nice type of how to build brand on LinkedIn. And it describes sort of the different stereotypes of the person who drops you a PDF and the person who sort of goes in with the dreaded sentence of, when would be a good time to have a 30-minute call? And I've never, I mean, like when we go out on a date, buy me a drink first, like it's not like, hi, can we skip the drinks? They cost money. Can we go straight to your place? That's not how that works, right? So, and then there's sort of most people just sort of move away, and then there's sort of a subset who come back with humor and sort of engage, and so like, I read your blog, and actually you're so right, and you know what, this isn't really working for me, and then we're having a conversation, and then I'm happy to listen. So that's my way of weeding that out. I've heard a different one from a great guy in M&A recently. I met him in Boston, and he said, What he does is he responds by saying, absolutely, we can have a conversation. We can have a 10-minute call, 15-minute call. Please schedule it through this address. Just to let you know, it costs $75. And he hasn't earned any money yet, he says. It's 2 weeks in. But introduction calls, like if I ask to be introduced to those companies that schedule calls, I mean, they charge me as well. So he says, yeah, I'm going to charge. And he had one call with one guy who came back and said, like, that's okay. I'm happy with the 75. Just to let you know that I charge 73 for this. I'll send you the difference. And just because the response was fairly good, so he actually took that call, which I think is great. But I think all of these things just show us that we're still finding our way. It's still social selling. There was a time when inboxing absolutely everyone, just like email marketing. And I mean, email marketing in what, 97, 98, when you still had to sort of turn on your modem and wait for it to connect. And then ISDN had a ridiculous open rate of what, 50%, because you were the only one doing it, right? And so for a bit on LinkedIn, if you were the one person who sort of read the profile, said like, that guy's into sustainability, and then you go, hey, we're doing this in sustainability, people will be like, oh, well, I'll have a look at that. Because and now we've gotten to the space where actually on digital we need to be at least as sophisticated as if we approach someone in real life, if not more sophisticated, because it's a simple truth that's always been and always will be, which is that everyone loves to buy, but no one likes to be sold to.
Yeah, 100% well said. And I think the industry itself, if you think about the marketing industry, has been to blame, I think, for this more of a callous approach from the target audience, if you like, because of the type of messaging and the approach. It's been impersonal. It's been spam. It's been one of those that literally put people off. So you tend to be on guard all the time, or you tend to filter everything out, and only if it really stands out, and I think the biggest culprits are the marketing industry itself. And if I just think about those selling marketing to marketing people, are probably worse, because they only really make money out of selling marketing stuff to marketing people, who then go and regurgitate that.
But you've hit the nail on the head there, because you're talking about marketing selling, and I think that's one of the problems. Is there's a fundamental misunderstanding of how that triangle works between brand building, marketing, and sales, right? So you're in marketing, and but what you're doing is you're pitching, and you haven't informed anyone, you haven't done any content marketing, you're pitching, you have no business pitching, because you haven't built brand. So you're not credible as a brand, so you can't come out, right? So if Coca-Cola reached out to me directly and said, hey, we've been interested in we'd like to do a project, and we're like, well, you got brand, right? We can talk. I know who you are. Then the marketing bit, you haven't actually talked, or you haven't provided free content, you haven't provided information, you haven't engaged through insights. And so you've neither built brand or already have inherited brand, nor have you done the marketing bit. You've gone straight to sales. And that's the same as taking your vacuum cleaner and going door to door. And that's different. But then you can't, the problem is that there's no barrier to entry online, right? So before I let you take my working capital in the form of vacuum cleaners and put it in a car, which I'm paying for, before you go out, I need to know you're good. But in digital, I can just carpet bomb everything, and people don't understand. You need the brand, right? So the difference, just because it's a fun topic to me, right? So bad sales is you inbox someone and hope for the best. Brand building works differently. I'll meet you. We haven't sold each other anything. In fact, all we've done is build a bit of rapport, because we talk about the same topics. We'll keep talking. I'll keep engaging with your content. You'll keep engaging with mine. Years down the line, and it could be years. And that's why patience is such a virtue in sales, especially, right? Years down the line, I will need someone as an interim market director, and I'll remember you because we've had good experiences and you've established your brand with me over time. I can't, like, you're just at the top of my head, my mind, for some weird reason, right? Because I've kept seeing good content from you over the years, 17, 20 times. And then I reach out to you on whatever it is, Twitter or whatnot, and I go, hey, I don't suppose we could talk about an interim marketing role. And you'll be like, you'll be the proverbial snake in the grass. You've been waiting. You'll be like, we sure fucking can. Right? That's brand. That's the power of brands. You've done, and people don't seem to have the patience. As marketing organizations, I understand in corporate, there's sort of a, corporate will come in and say, well, these are the KPIs. You must generate this many leads. You must generate this many sales and so on. But for that engine to click, you need to allow it time. Otherwise, it will destroy brand and destroy value. And believe me not, everyone knows how to gamify KPIs nowadays. So everyone, if you give people KPIs that say you need to make this many calls per week, you need to have this many leads per month and so on, people will gamify that, optimize their own time using that system, always hit their bonus target somehow, and you wonder why your brand deteriorates.
Yeah, very, very, very well said. And yeah, I just, from a B2B point of view, I mean, we do. I mean, this particular show is all about that sort of merger and acquisition, the post-merger integration, and all the marketing leadership and that around business and speaking to business leaders and so on. But marketing leadership is something completely different. Is how do you become a leader within your space? Now, maybe you're not particularly in the marketing department, but marketing should be across all departments. If you think about it, if you're in the if you're a CFO position, you should be marketing the fact that there are things that you do. You should be putting out messaging. And marketing for me is about messaging. Marketing for me is about, I think you're right, it's about brand and so on, but also building credibility, building authority, building
absolutely inside and internal and external. Yeah, and there's a terrible word within brand which is called employer brand. I don't like it. I just think everything's brand. So it shouldn't be. I don't think we should differentiate too much. But absolutely, the finance organization is should show off its expertise, should show off its joy in engaging with your own brand, the joy of working with those people, and that's the best kind of content marketing. It leaves a positive connotation in people's minds. By the way, just so people don't get confused about this, I'm not hating on sales. I think there are very few problems that can't be solved with more sales. So it's just the misunderstanding of what toolkit to employ where, right? That's what I'm talking about. I think you need to really understand sales, marketing, and brand separately and together to get them right. And so sales, similarly to marketing, what you said, I also think that everything is sales. I mean, we have colleagues in the US on the packaging side. I've always been astounded how well they do at this. So it is not atypical for their CFO to engage with a client CFO, customer CFO. Right? That's also where deals are made. That's also where things are discussed, and it's about trust and expertise and understanding that part of the value chain as well. It's not just salespeople with purchasing people doing things, and the better you understand the whole order to cash chain and how every part really plays its part in great customer relationships and building brand, in doing the best kind of marketing, which is with sort of through partnership with existing partners, and by that I mean through providing excellent service throughout your value chain to your customers.
Yeah, and there's that the philosophy. I mean, every Friday I have a segment where I go through 42 business growth principles, which are really marketing principles. But um, I mean, I haven't covered it yet. But I mean, there's one that where I talk a lot about moments of truth. Those specific moments in which your target audience or the people that you're trying to reach have a window into your world. Now, if you imagine, you don't know a company. I mean, take Coca-Cola, that example you mentioned earlier. If Coca-Cola's brand is great, but when I do phone there, or I do try and contact them because there's something that's gone a little wrong, um, and the phone sort of continues ringing, nobody answers, or I have this weird chat bot that gives me every answer but the one that I'm looking for. Or there's this call center that puts me on hold, and they're very poor in terms of the abilities. That's a moment of truth. That's my window into the entire universe of that company. I extrapolate the assumption, my thinking about that entity purely through that 1 or 2 or 3 minute experience. And if you think about across the entire customer experience or client experience or client journey or even investor journey, because we also deal with investors in that invest in our businesses or invest in the entities we're trying to acquire, etc. If you don't understand and break down those individual moments of truth, those spaces, those little moments in which your customer or your client engages with you and your investor. And if we look even right down to the accounts department or warehousing or the shipment, or I mean, you deal with packaging and you talk about dealing with customers. Where if the item arrives and the packaging is no good and it's popped everywhere and it's leaking or whatever it is, or the quality is bad, or I just get a really tacky feeling about whatever it is I get. I mean, that's a moment of truth. That is how I make an assumption about the entire company. And I think that's part of marketing leadership is to understand the entire scope of what a customer or a client journey is.
And now we're back to personal brand, because it's my brand isn't my picture on LinkedIn. My brand isn't my CV. My brand is the interaction you're having with me in this moment, right? That's and whether I'm the quality department, when I deal with a customer complaint, or whether I'm customer service and my degree of responsiveness. That's where you build company brand, but also personal brand.
Yeah, and you're right. It's a personal brand, and that's why people need to know people. I mean, we don't deal with an organization. We deal with human beings within organizations. And I have this constant conversation with clients and people and people within my organization, other organizations, is that you don't have. I mean, I don't know how many times I've actually said this in the last 25 plus years, is that when you say I've got, I mean, let's use Coca-Cola as an example. Coca-Cola is my client. Okay. I don't know if you ever heard that. Like, that XYZ brand is my client. In fact, you only know one person in the entire organization. And now you're assuming the entire organization is your client. And it's like, how deep and broad did you actually go within the organization to understand the entire organization if they are your client? Think about that. So, I mean, think about, there are people behind the people,
Yeah.
and how much homework have you actually done in terms of across the cross section and so on? Do you truly understand your client if you are a B2B organization?
That is a really, really interesting notion. That's actually really, really powerful. I'm also thinking that I'm not necessarily that interested at name dropping unless they are a genuine reference on your website and there's someone I can talk to. So if you come in and you say, like, I did a big piece of work for Coca-Cola, it took a long time, it was difficult to do. They're a big organization. They really know their quality because they can pick their suppliers. We did this case. they'd be happy to be a reference. And if I don't know you, that might be interesting. But you saying that we work with the likes of PepsiCo, just to mention the other one as well. So
Yes.
podcast is sponsored by fizzy drinks, so the likes of that's why would I care? I mean, it's like we're far away from having from a meaningful discussion, and it's surely not going to be based on the sixth guy who comes in and names drops a company.
Yeah, and that does sometimes bug me a bit, because you see all the logos on many websites, and that we've dealt with these companies, and like, okay, maybe, I don't know, maybe you had a small engagement, but did you truly engage with the company? So things have become less and less and less believable. And I think marketing people have to start realizing that, superficial surface does not make the difference, as it did in the past. You can't just name drop. You got to truly get under the surface and build those relationships. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right what you said earlier. It takes time. It takes nurturing, but proper nurturing. I did have a conversation with the guy sometime a few days back, and he was saying, you can't automate nurturing. This whole thing about, I've got to automate everything. I mean, even just the old LinkedIn thing that you were talking about, people are trying to automate the connections, and they're automating these messages that just get spammed out in LinkedIn. But once you
argument, I disagree slightly. Just as I so I'm fully with you on that you can't build meaningful relationships through automation. But there is now, what we see is, even those references, the name dropping, the polished website, all of that, those have become hygiene factors, because everyone's pushed up their game because they know that they can't do without. And you need to stay well ahead of all of that. And one of the ways to do that and to bring value, of course, is building relationships. And I fully agree, you can't automate that. But there is a layer where through automation, you can service areas that otherwise you just wouldn't get to. So as an example, you might have 2,700 customers, out of which the 20 top customers are 80% of your business. And then you've got sort of the high potential customers somewhere in the middle, where you think, well, we're gonna nurture these. We need to go out to them more. And then you've got a sort of a big revenue area, but all of the customers, one by one, are very, very small. So one customer doesn't really matter, but as a totality, that group matters. So before you manage to sort of, because it's difficult to make a call out of those customers with limited resources of who we're going to try and nurture into the next categories. What can work really well is marketing automation with good content, with customers that otherwise you'd never talk to and never email, because they'll go from feeling completely ignored to at least getting a slightly customized message with a few questions for them, which they can engage with.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you for saying that, because I think it's a language issue. So there's this blanket term called nurturing. Now, if you think, and if you've had children, when you nurture a child, you embrace the child. You take care of it. You feed your child. Okay, you have a connection with the child. You nurturing, right? There's a difference between nurturing and if I can't automate the nurturing of my children, okay, I mean, that, if you think about it, so the word, I say the word is the problem. If you want to automate the regular contact with people that you haven't yet built or don't have the time to have the conversations with, perfect, but don't mix up the meaning of the word nurture with me regularly contacting people and continue automating the connection building process.
Absolutely,
as opposed to nurture. And I think that's where a lot of marketing people get it wrong. They just bucket this thing called nurture. Everything gets thrown into, I'm going to nurture my client base, or
you're absolutely
nurture
right.
my list. So I mean,
And
I just, it was it's a language issue for me, and it's that for me is where the things start getting too gray.
fully with you. And I think that there's sort of an interesting rule of thumb there for how nurturing works, in that you nurturing is putting yourself into a position where you're able to listen. And the creator gave us one mouth and two ears, and everyone's heard this one before. But sales means using them in that proportion. Good sales, right? Good advice, good marketing. So you need to, nurturing means you need to get into a position where you can listen to the other person, and you do more listening than talking. And the difficulty in that journey is getting into the room, or into the kind of room where someone wants to talk to you about meaningful things so that you're able to listen. Otherwise, you're in that trap where you're sort of talking at them and hoping that something catches, and no one's listening. And that's the trick, and that's where it gets difficult. And it is hard work. But the nice thing about the hard work is it's satisfying when it comes off, and also when you've done the work, and when you start building partnerships, you end up having something that will potentially last you a career. And I mean, I've now, it's fun. I'm on the board of directors for a software company, and there's a guy who had his first customer was the grandfather in '83, and then the father was his customer, and now the grandson is talking to his son. Right? So it's a multi-generational brand building and trusted relationship. And there's been years where there hasn't been business, and then you've come back together because the mutual trust is based on how much nurturing and listening has been done in both directions. By the way, marketing works both ways. So it's not just you're trying to get your service across to a client. There are very few organizations at the end of the day that are so big that they can run a rigorous sort of tendering process and say, well, every 2 years we're going to audit 15 companies to see which one of them is going to build our website, and we're going to score them on price and expertise and whatnot. That usually costs most companies more than the budget for whatever project they're going for. So it is absolutely in the interest of the buyer to nurture that relationship as well, and to build partnerships. And with WePack, we've always had that tradition in my organizations that we're very blunt with our suppliers. We push them, but we treat them like family. And so we invite them to our meetups. We take them out. We invite them. It's not them taking us out. We take them out. We invite them to see what we do. And lo and behold, we get responses much quicker than the SLAs say. We get, I want to try your product, and usually trying that product would cost. There's a good chance I can try that product without paying for it, because we have a great relationship. They understand our business because I've taken the time to explain my business to them, to train them in my business so that they know what to offer us. And it also puts away with the need to sort of do the carpet bombing of apologies. That's just London in the background, typical morning in London. So it stops them from saying like, hey, we have 60 new products. We just sent you a book about them. It means they understand the business, and you cannot, it's difficult to find out all things about your client's business without them being willing to share or inviting you in, right? So
yeah, and it's a two-way. It's like any relationship. It's a two-way street, isn't it? And that's why where customer or client selection comes in. We think we're selecting our clients, but we're almost selecting each other. We're selecting our, it's a joint selection process, if you like. There has to be a connection. There has to be a rapport. There has to be a sharing of values, or whatever it is, however you want to explain it. But there really does have to, and that's an incredibly valid point. It's not just a single directional thing. I want to ask you a little bit about what's really interesting for me, is you're quite a let's say very diverse, very flexible character, and what's really interesting is in your profile you talk about being highly analytical decision maker, yet marketing and all that is more relationship and so on. I mean, tell me how how, I mean, you talk about extensive experience in building, turning around, and growing companies. I
So
mean, there are a number of elements, or let's call it attributes, that you need to do that successfully. Tell me a little bit about that.
so to me, intuition is also data, right? A gut feeling is your experience and something you've read or heard or experienced before coming together through your subconscious. So to me, these are not contradictions at all. And I think the creative industries especially need to be data-based, need to be data-focused, need to understand, need to be able to measure what things that they try do. Right? So I'm a massive advocate of experimenting, but I'm also an advocate of having a look at how it went afterwards, and looking at the numbers. I mean, everything we do in marketing, to me, marketing is problem solving, and marketing problem solving is behavioral science. The only economics that works to me, that works both in practice and in theory, is behavioral science, behavioral economics. And so this is a science foundation. This is a data and rigorous rigor approach foundation. But on that foundation, you build yourself the freedom to try, to experiment, to acknowledge when things work and when they didn't. To in a startup way, I suppose the cliche is sort of failing fast and then going again quickly. And I mean, if I look at the other cliche is that the world will never change as slowly again as it does today, and yet it has never changed as fast as it does. Right. So if I look at, for instance, the people that I've hired in the last 3 years, none of them have degrees that existed when I went to uni, and I'm not 120. Right. So masters in digital marketing, masters in sustainability analytics. Right. So all of this, the change is constant, and we need more and more of the ability to create, to be creative, to problem solve at speed. And at the same time, we need to make sure we're creating more data than ever before. And that's true. That's my statement is now still true, but already old, because in this moment we create more data than we created the moment before, right? So we need to get a grasp on that. We need to make decisions based on all of that. We need to make sure that we're transparent with the facts. I think that's one of the problems we have. By the way, when we talk about behavioral science and problem solving, humanity is absolutely fantastic at solving any kind of problem when two things are true. One is we have data transparency. We understand what we're solving. Right? So example, climate change is a great one, global warming. When people shout at us to stop everything we're doing, nothing happens. When we get told this is our carbon footprint per year that we're allowed, these are the carbon footprints of the different things that we do. Now here's your menu. You can go up to this amount of carbon per year. We're perfectly capable of doing that. It's annoying to us, but we're able to solve that problem. Then when you add more people into it, it becomes more complex, right? So collective decision-making is much more complex. But the point here is, as long as we have data, and as long as something is framed as a personal choice, we can make any decision and easily. And to me, marketing is that combination of the data that allows a decision and being informed, and the story behind it, of course, as well, and then framing it as a personal choice, framing it as a menu, right?
Yeah, I love the way you put it, and I really want to just talk a little bit about the one of the two organizations that you belong to, the Empower Motion, where you've got say again.
Yes, I haven't, so because I work with a few, but that one is actually that's my love child, so I'm very happy to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm actually quite. That's why I thought let me bring it up, because that triangle and the when I look at the web page and I see your philosophy there. I mean, I really would like you to share that with the audience, because I think it's quite powerful what you've put together there. So I mean, yeah, let me tell me a bit about your love child.
Yeah, so Empower Motion is essentially what happened, so my early days, I was a startup entrepreneur working in a big four consultancy. So time management became something that I got quite good at. I got good at sort of making sure in the morning that I knew exactly what outcomes I'd need every day. If the day got away from me, if everything went to shit, so to say, what are the two things I need to do today so that I go to bed happy and say, well, this was a good day despite everything. And that became my must-win battle methodology. So every morning I pick two. I pick a private one and I pick one for work to make sure that at the end of the day, if everything else fails, if I don't get through my task list, I've at least done those two things, which have the biggest impact in my life. And so back then I was already also teaching marketing and sales in university and leadership. I started early with that and then presentation skills. And 2016, I was out of work for a while and I traveled Silicon Valley and I met a large number of very, very interesting people at conferences. I had the chance to sit next to Elon Musk at Startup Grind, and I had a few other high-profile people. And what I found was very powerful. So one thing was no one had notifications on their phones. The other thing was everyone had a morning routine. And the third thing was almost everyone had affirmations that they recited back to themselves, and they kept sort of building on that. And so I put my time management and my habit building from my early days, 15, 20 years ago, together with what I learned in Silicon Valley, and I turned that into a program. And I'd also figured out, and I'd read all the science on this, that building a habit takes 21 days, right? So when you teach a child to brush their teeth, they'll fight back for quite a while because it's not a habit yet. Though I wager most people listening now will actually brush their teeth every day, right? Because it's a habit. It just happens habitually. Now, it takes 21 days to build a habit. So if you want to have healthier habits, you want to have a morning routine, you want to get to bed earlier, it'll take you 21 days. And now comes the problem. It takes you 60 days not to lose the habit again. That's why gyms make most of their money in January, because people make a New Year's resolution of going to the gym. They buy a membership for a year because it comes at a discount. They're fine for 21 days, and then they get a curveball. They get very drunk, or they have a celebration. They go on a business trip, the flight gets delayed, and everything goes to hell. And so then they stop, and they don't really understand why they stopped. It's because it takes 60 days for that muscle memory, for the neuroscience to help you to build that muscle memory of habits. And so what we built with Empower Motion was a program where we said, okay, let's take the most powerful habit of entrepreneurs, there's plenty there, athletes, plenty there, lots of programs there as well, but as a unique twist, artists, because I've worked with artists all my life. My first company, the one I built during my Deloitte days, was a dance company, which we scaled to 11 countries. And there's so much to learn from top artists, from their discipline, from the way they approach a creative process, creative problem solving. And we said, let's take all of those and put them into a 10-week program, because 10 weeks is 70 days. So we have 60 days and then a few more days to be sure for the most powerful habits to form themselves. And I started that as a project with 6 people. And then the next cohort, we're now up to cohort 15. The next cohort had 12. And the one after that had 30. And I had to split them into 2 groups because I only want 12 people, because otherwise I can't engage with them on that level. So every Wednesday and Thursday, we run cohort. Lots of management consultants, entrepreneurs, and management. And it got out of hand. So it was just me in the beginning. Then we hired a biohacker and a time management expert with 3 coaches. Then we hired a board. Now we're 16 people. It runs every Wednesday and Thursday, 15 cohorts, which means we've been doing this for 150 weeks now, which is scary at times. And I never intended to scale it, so I didn't want that. So where I've seen it as a most powerful, the 2 tools that matter most to me is, one is the network building, because when we talk about nurturing, we've had 20 hours together. We've talked about meaningful things and built habits, right? There's no way we haven't connected. That's one thing. The other thing is, it's a fantastic tool for hiring. So everyone I've hired in the last couple of years has either gone through it, or I've then sort of asked them whether they wanted it for free once they've been in the company. right? And it's been incredibly powerful because you get to know the person completely differently. And this is exactly the same as when you said earlier that there are people who there's many people who name drop a company that they've once worked with. People have optimized that because that's a minimum requirement. Well, interview processes are the same. You get nothing out of people, even if you do an assessment center and six interviews, because people have done the course, hired someone to help them, read everything they found on Google, and then sort of worked through the workbook of consulting cases, let's say, as a book. So everyone's the same. And this way, you find out much more than what they tell you in an interview, which is what they think I want to hear. They'll actually genuinely tell me what their strengths and what they want to be doing in life. So we find much more meaningful engagements with each other. So it's, long story short, it's actually very simple. The habits of the world's most successful in 10 weeks. That's the slogan.
That's brilliant, and I just absolutely love that. I think that's massively key, and I think that adds into that whole marketing leadership framework that I think in terms of a mindset is it's about taking the lead, being within marketing. I'm thinking that marketing leadership goes into, I mean, exactly like you said, employment. I think if you look at the HR department, the human resources, that thing about this reactive behavior of HR departments. I mean, I've always thought that was really, I've had conversations with different HR people, and this reactive behavior is like, we need to. There's an open position. Let's go out and find somebody. It's like, that's too late. You should be marketing the company. You should be building a list of CVs and relationships, and you should be understanding who your potential target market is in terms of people that you could, when you are ready and you have an opening, who you could call on to bring into your company that and you vetted and you have a relationship with. I mean, employment. I mean, you had a really good one there with your suppliers, building relationship there. And we're also talking about customers and so on. And marketing leadership, for me, covers the entire spectrum of a business and being that true person. I mean, if you look at even right down into the people that do the warehouse management, for instance, those at the receiving bays and so on. I mean, they're dealing with I mean, let's say you're receiving goods into a warehouse. You are dealing with your suppliers' workforce. I mean, you're dealing with those. You got to make it easy. You got to make that whole journey comfortable, because all of that information goes back, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you're spot on. I mean, think about this, right? So when you order something from Amazon, it's almost never Amazon that delivers it. But when the delivery goes wrong and they leave it in your neighbor's doghouse again, who do you complain to?
Yes, exactly.
You can't even remember whether it was DPD or UPS or whoever. It's Amazon. It's their brand. And there's two ends that matter the most in that interaction. One is when you buy and you feel like you haven't been conned into only buying Amazon's choice brands, and when you actually feel like you've made an informed choice and the buying experience is easy. And the other end is when it gets delivered. And so, Amazon, they built their brand with their delivery as well. And so do we all.
They've taken care of all what I call those moments of truth. I mean, I think that comes from, I think one of the airlines had implemented those moments of truth. I want to go a little bit more personal, because we're coming to the end of the hour. And Harry, I really just want to know a little bit more about sort of, you spoke about your Empower Motion and those habits and things that you've instilled in yourself. But, from a work-life balance and just from being a normal human being and keeping yourself, steady and so on. What do you do? And then maybe go. I hear another another siren in the background. Tell us a little bit more about what you're currently doing, and if anybody needs to contact you, how do they get hold of you? So tell us a little bit more about sort of how do you keep that balance, and then tell us a bit more about how people can get hold of you.
So you can get me on LinkedIn. I'm going to drop it here as well. You have my name. You can get me on LinkedIn. You can get me through Dudley's LinkedIn for sure. I'm very quick on LinkedIn. I think it's a wonderful tool, and people by and large are professional and polite on it. So I'm very, very happy to engage on it. It's my primary platform for professional networking. What I do for work-life balance, so I do have a fairly, it's almost boring. I have for a creative, but I have a very rigorous morning and evening routine, very rigorous. So I start my morning the same way every day. My son is just over 2 years old, so he starts it with me if he's awake. So there is a degree of exercise, just enough to get the brain working, because the brain wakes up. So there's about 12 to 20 minutes of exercise in the morning. This morning was a bit longer. Then I have a planner in which I plan out my day. Often I've done it the previous day already. It's just a rolling forecast, but sort of the must-win battles of the day. So what do I need to achieve today so that I'm happy in the evening? In line with my big goals. So urgencies take care of themselves. So if the boss has written me an email saying this needs to be done by midday, well, that's not a must-win battle. That takes care of itself because it is that urgent. But must-win battles are the bigger ones. And then I read a little bit, and I read something that I wouldn't otherwise read, and that's for the stimulation of the brain. So I've now come across this wonderful podcasting. Actually, by a guy called Dudley Peacock. So that's been my go-to, is going to be my go-to for the rest of the week. But I'll do something to stimulate thoughts that I don't think I would otherwise have. And I avoid my phone before I do all those things, and emails especially. And so that gets me started. And other than that, I mean, I enjoy my sports. I'm a football lover. I enjoy dance, and I'm a family man. So I cook. And I have done a lot of work with myself over the last 5 years to make sure that I move towards the things that I actually love, because I don't think anyone can be Michael Jordan, or if you're a footballing man, Cristiano Ronaldo in your field, if you don't love the process. And that's one of the things that enduringly I love about marketing. I love every aspect of marketing. There are other things that I've done all my life, like program and project management for big ERP systems. I don't like it. I got good at it because I had to, and it was a useful tool, but I don't love it, which means that I can't be the world's best at it. So there comes a time, and there's different cutoff points for people, different ages, because there's a time when you need to learn all the toolkit that you're able to function, right? You need to be able to read your numbers. You need to be able to do project management at a level so you get stuff done. But then comes the time where you say, well, I've got a good enough level at these things. Now can I focus on things that I can actually be a rock star at, I can be an expert at. So working on your strengths, not just on your weaknesses. And I've been working on that transition for 5 years now, so that most of the time I work on things that I enjoy, which means that it's really easy the work-life balance gets a lot easier. You can make your energy last much longer when you actually enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, that's spot on. And that was a great way to bring the podcast to an end today. And wow, I mean, that's been absolutely fascinating. And I've got to say, it's been an absolute privilege having met you. And also, hopefully, we can continue our building our relationship going into the future as well. And I'd love to see you on the podcast again. I'm sure your journey will take you into very interesting places as you go. And so yes, thank you very much for that, Eric.
The M&A one, I'll have lots of anecdotes. So that one will be, I'm sure that'll be entertaining. So I have the murder mystery of a beaver killed. I have a case where I was locked in a factory and I climbed down the outside of the factory wall. And so a number of very, very interesting stories from the M&A side, much more personal, much more sort of anecdotal in a way.
Yeah, I love that, and we'll be doing that episode the next week or so, and I'm really looking forward to that one. But for the marketing leadership side, I think it was stunning. Thank you so much. Thanks for your input.
Thank you for your time.
It's been absolutely brilliant. Let me just say goodbye to the audience, and then I'll come straight back to you, Harry. So just hold a sec. So thank you everyone for joining us today on another episode of our podcast. And today I think it was a fascinating guest, and Harry Henry is for me the epitome of that individual that wants to keep moving, growing, understanding, and really broadening the deeper, richer part of being human, and also of mastering skills that are massively important across business and business growth, business development, but also within the passion and things that he shares. And so thank you very much to Harry. I do appreciate that. We're going to have him on another episode around M&A. But thank you, audience. I much appreciate you supporting. If you do like what we're doing, please subscribe. Please follow us on any one of the various channels that we're on. We look forward to seeing you again on the next episode, and have a super day going forward. Hi everybody, this is Dudley again, and if you need help with a future or existing post-merger integration, I want to invite you to arrange a free, no obligation meeting with us. During the meeting, we'll find out exactly what you need, what your challenges are, and we'll explain how our unique PMI slipstream method can help you. Simply call us or visit mergerintegration.co.uk. That's mergerintegration.co.uk, or come to our website, skillfulpursuit.com.